Yes, okay.
Yes. Okay. Good morning. Good morning on that sunny day, starting a second part of the workshops of the series that we planned for building capacities of rural development programming for the staff of the Ministry of Economy and Ministry of Agriculture and the subordinate or institutions. I'm very glad that you all participate again in the event, and I hope that you will find today's workshop interesting and useful. We are planning today a little bit of a change because we want this workshop to be vivid and discussive, to give a chance to the participants to discuss, exchange their thoughts, and to understand better how the process goes through identifying their own capacities and finding that all the resources they need are in fact in your hands and in your heads. Let me introduce again Mr. Andrzej Hałasiewicz, who is our trainer in charge of the rural development, and Mr. Ramil Hussein, who is our moderator of the sessions, very important person because he will act as a catalyst of not only a discussion but also formulating certain conclusions and recommendations that may come out of that discussion. As usually, as we know, the today's webinar will last until 11 o'clock. And we plan to have, instead of one coffee break, we plan to have 2 breaks because we have changed our minds today discussing how we can more effectively organize the workshop to have discussion effective as much as possible. So there will be, after the first presentation, a short break, and there will be a similar break, about 10 minutes after the second presentation, during which you will have a chance to take your private time, have a coffee or tea, whatever. I hope that you will enjoy this workshop. Today's theme is one of the critical themes of the whole design of the workshops, which is about identification of the sources of information, where they are, how we can grab for that information, and how useful it can be for your work. So this is the main topic of today's workshop, and I give the floor to Mr. Andrzej Hałasiewicz to conduct this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacek, for your very good introduction. Thank you, Professor Ramil Hussein, for your great support. Let me at the beginning express my pleasure to meet you again after some break. So because of this few weeks break, I think that it makes sense at the beginning to remind all of us what we have discussed so far. I will share my screen with you and we'll start presentation. Okay, so as Jacek Węsierski already said, this webinar is about the methods and means of data collecting and processing in the process of rural development programming. Of course, we collect data for some reasons, and we'll discuss this during today's webinar. So agenda for today, the first part of the session will be a summary of the previous webinar, and then we'll move to methods and means of data collecting for the process of rural development programming. After 10 minutes break, we'll have the second sessions, which in fact will start with some kind of conclusion from your discussion before the break, and then the third sessions when we'll discuss the issue of analysis, estimation, and information for programming and monitoring. And the second session will be about the methods of and means of data collecting and processing. So let's remind all of us what is rural development about. So for sure, rural development is not only about agriculture. Quite long period of time when we thought rural, it was almost equal to agriculture. It's not true any longer. So in many places, rural inhabitants are not connected to agriculture at all. In Poland, currently, it is 20% of the rural population is to different level connected or related to agriculture, but only about 10% or even less now. The farming, agriculture is the main source of income. So rural development is in fact about diversification of the local economy, and everything is about improvement of the quality of life of local rural areas and local rural inhabitants. So it is about rural people, how to improve their or create the condition they could themselves to increase their level of life and improve the quality of life. For that, it's important element, the rising knowledge and changing mindset of people in this process, so that people could take care of their life themselves. So the best use of resources is to support people in rising knowledge, in increasing the quality of human capital. So our first webinar in this series was in the middle of December 2020, and we made a review of the concept of rurality, the concept of rural areas in the European Union, the point of view of OECD countries, and so on. So we also look at the rural development policy and the policy implementation mechanism, what kind of tools are used, what kind of programs, and so on, and data and information needed for rural development programming, monitoring, and evaluation. So during the previous webinars, we already touched very much the subject of today's discussions about the sources of information. So what makes a rural community or a good place to live, work, doing business, to have a good life for the family, and to grow old. So there is a quite whole variety of factors. It's important that to have this holistic point of view. And for sure, very important is accessibility of services like schools, healthcare, but not only. The good conditions for running business, it's also important. And social trust and community leadership played an important role. So this holistic lens on rural development, focusing on well-being across many dimensions. So rural development is very much holistic approach, and thinking about rural development, we need to think about healthcare, education, about many aspects which are important for well-being of rural inhabitants. So it's because each place have its own specificity. There are quite significant differences between different places. So the place-based policies are very important. If we find a way to deliver place-based policies, it's the best way to increase the well-being of rural inhabitants. It's worth to add that increasing the well-being of rural inhabitants is in fact for favor of the whole populations. So when rural inhabitants have a better life, there's a better life for the whole country, for urban dwellers as well. Very important is sound multi-level governance and community-led development. We want to have a good place-based policies. Very much is needed this community-led development, that people themselves, they identifying their needs and working out ways to meet challenges and fulfill their needs. Prepare rural areas for technological, demographic, and environmental change. It's a very important aspect. Today, those technological aspect is particularly important. Demography have a significant influence on the situation, but also environmental changes we need to take into account as well, and find a way to mitigate climate changes and adapt to those changes. Address the diversity of challenges and opportunities facing rural areas, and be informed by sound evidence and data at the right scale. So again, information and reliable data are very important. So on the previous webinars, I tried to show because there's in fact is some kind of continuum. What is rural, and the rural area very different. So the most popular seems to be the OECD definition of rural areas, which take in account the density and relations to the local centers. So rural areas close to the city, and on the other end, the remote rural areas. So why rural policy and rural development policy is needed? What are the policy stakeholders and beneficiaries? We discussed it we looked at the different approaches to constructing.
İnkişaf proqramlarının formalaşmasının müxtəlif yanaşmalarını nəzərdən keçirdik və
program and policies and its implementation plan. So why rural policy and rural development is needed? We try to answer these questions. Rural development differentiation of approaches to constructing and the development programs and key components of the programs or implementation plan. On the next webinar, we discuss the rural development program objectives. We look at the different administrative level of rural development programming. As maybe some of you remember, in the EU, in the European Union, different member states have a different approach. Some countries have the one rural development program for the whole country. Some countries like Italy, France, Germany have the regional rural development programs. Despite of we have one program or a few programs, the programs coordination is needed, of course, in the case when you have more programs in the country, this coordination requires more sophisticated approaches and institutions. So, looking at this methodology of rural areas, and the green color is predominantly rural areas, the yellow is intermediate, so something between, and red color is predominantly urban. So as you see in Europe, we have the different situation in this part of the Europe. The density of predominantly urban is really dominating, but looking at Poland, we see that around some bigger cities, here is Wrocław or Katowice, we have also the predominantly urban areas, but in Poland we have a lot of predominantly rural areas, and you see that in Nordic countries, Nordic countries are very much rural. So here's a Finland, and here's a Sweden. So Finland is an example that a very rural country could be very innovative and could have a good life. Their inhabitants have a good life. On 8th of February, we discuss the measures of program implementations, how we could measure achievements of defined goals. I presented you the context indicators, how they are defined, and what tools are used for monitoring. And then we moved closer to Azerbaijan. We look at the Guba-Kamas regions and at the development indicators which could be used there. So we try to show you the EU experience and possibility to adapt this experience and tools to your country and your regions. So just briefly the review, what we discussed so far, and today we are going ahead. as I already said at the beginning, that the sources of information were already discussed on the previous webinars. So for sure, when you want to find some data, you could start with your United Nations agencies. It depends on the topic. It could be the labor organization, could be the health organizations. In the case of COVID, many of us are looking on this website for data to see how the COVID situation is changing. But from this United Nations organizations, from our point of view, probably Food and Agriculture Organization is very important and very useful. So let me show you what you can find, on the website there. There are a lot of good information. Hopefully it will not take too much time. Yes, it's working slowly, but it's working. So for sure, at FAO Stat, you can find very, very useful information related to Azerbaijan, but also a lot of information which you can use for comparison to see how your country looks in the relation to the other countries in the region or in the world. Yes, definitely too slowly. When I make the trial before, it was much faster, but now it's really too slow. Let me try again. I'm afraid that I don't know what is the reason that too many people in my area is working remotely and internet is working slower now, or some other reasons. I see improvement, so maybe I will. Okay, I will give up, I suppose. Okay, too much. Too much. You can take a look yourself on the website of FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, and also on the World Bank, when you could find data about Azerbaijan as well. In the case of both the World Bank, also you can contact the local offices of this organization and discuss some issue with the staff over there, and for sure they will assist you, they will help you to find needed information. So for us, for the European Union member states, and the Eurostat is a very, very important source of information. And here we could find a lot of information related to to agriculture and related to rural areas and rural development. I am making next. Yeah. No, it's working too slowly, so we will not waste time waiting for it. But when you will open this link, you could find information, and then you can follow the thematic tables and find a specific information for each member state, for every country, different subject, and so on. Then, as we discussed, the very important from our point of view are common agriculture policy indicators. Performance indicators related to agriculture and rural development, and context indicators. Those context indicators, from my point of view, could be very useful for Azerbaijan as well, and for sure to find a lot of inspiration of there to work out your own tools, your own indicators. Because we are just now under the process of the preparation of the strategic plans for next programming period related to agriculture and rural development. So because I am a member of the evaluation team of this program, we are working on ex-ante evaluation. I would like to share with you some, let's say, practical information related to this process. And so it is the reason why I proposed an example of Poland, but I will also open you a possibility to look at other country, Austria, that you can also see how they are working on it. So we have this national statistic, our statistical office, which collects information. But very important is also this source of information, research institutes. So that researchers are examine specific subjects and deliver information and analysis. And then the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development itself as institution also have a lot of information in their data systems. And then information in our 16 voivodeships, 16 regions, which also have a good sources, good data about region. And our paying agency for restructuring and modernization of agriculture, which have a huge data related all agricultural farm, which are registered in the system. So it's over around 1,300,000 farms registered in this system, and a lot of informations are available there. So in the process of programming, we are using all of those sources. And now my proposal is that you will try to discuss and think and discuss what are the available sources of information for diagnosis of the situation and for programming of development of Azerbaijan regions. I would like to ask Professor Rami Hussein to moderate these discussions. So please discuss and if possible agree on several sources of information and briefly describe them, what kind of information they have, how useful they are, what about access to them, and so on. So I've foreseen for this discussion 20 minutes, but Professor Rami Hussein will manage it. So, Professor Hussein, and the floor is yours.
Çox sağ ol, Anci. Təşəkkür edirəm. Hörmətli həmkarlar, əslində
Anje, thank you. So we're getting into the main part of our discussions. And this will be a ground for the next stages of our webinars. Now we were presented with Polish experience, and I'm sure this will bring more light to our discussions. Yes, indeed, we also have a National Statistics Office, which is the main source of information for us. But indeed, we also use some other sources of information. A serious set of information is available in the Ministry of Economics, Property Committee, Anti-Monopoly Committee also have this data. We have the data on the property, on the income. Ministry of Agriculture has available information on subsidies, for example. So we are now being added into this presentation, into this webinar as panelists, so that you would be able to speak now and tell us what are the potential source of information. Agri Research Center, COBIA representatives, the economic reforms, you this or the other way are the part of this source. You use these sources, so I call you to be active. Yes, we mostly use statistical State Statistics Committee. They have different sets of data, like regional data, agricultural data. But we know that some other sources of information are also available. Jacek also mentioned that, yes, he was we also mentioned that now we are at the stage of developing our national policy, and we're interested in sustainable development of regions. So those who are engaged under this program, they send inquiries to different agencies. So our discussions, our webinars would be useful as a contributive factor to this policy development. Let's have these discussions. I would like to hear each and every one of you. You all are panelists now, so you can speak now one by one. Please feel yourself free. Raise your hand. Who wants to share the views about existing sources of information, which sources of information you use, what is available, what is accessible, what is not accessible? So, who wants to start?
Çünki mən bilirəm ki, hazırda Aqrar Tədqiqatlar Mərkəzində də belə bir araşdırma aparılır.
I know that Agro Research Center is doing such kind of study now, and the northern regions have been selected.
Həmin araşdırmada iştirak edirdi və real olaraq hazırda rəqəmlərlə bağlı müraciət edir. Həmçinin İqtisadiyyat Nazirliyinin əməkdaşları da. Zənra xanım, həmkarlarımızdan biri panelist olmayıb, ikisi Elcan və
We have two attendees that also need to be made panelists yet.
hər biriniz mikrofonunuzu yandıraraq öz fikrinizi
So you can turn on your microphones and speak.
kimi, çünki hər biriniz bu sahənin peşəkarısınız.
Please be active.
Təranə xanım, buyura bilərsiniz.
Anybody?
Siz seçmək istəyirsiniz, böyük məmnuniyyətlə sizi dinləyərik.
Tarana, if you want to speak, please go ahead.
Elşad müəllim, hər birinizi panelist eləyib, ümid edirəm ki, səs eşidilir və biz də sizin səsinizi eşidəcəyik.
I hope you hear our voices and we will be able to hear your voices.
Bunlar mövzu deyil, hər birimiz
So this is what we are dealing on a day-to-day basis. This is something that we work with and work on based on the requests and instructions from our management.
çalışdığı qurumlarda kifayət qədər məlumatlar var. Ondan başqa digər qurumların
And
məlumatları
you use the data of your own agencies. You also use data from other agencies like Statistics Committee. You use FAO data
Ona görə zəhmət olmasa,
and others.
mən bu günlərdə elə Sənvər xanımın hazırladığı 15-dən çox arayışa baxdım ki, statistikaların və digər məlumatların
Recently, I reviewed about 15 requests that I've received from Senebar about different sources of information.
aktiv olaq,
Please be active.
dinləməyək.
We should not be listening only, we should be more active.
Buyurun, sabahınız xeyir.
Good morning. Good morning. I didn't want to intervene, but our colleagues are still refraining themselves.
Buyurun, xoş sizi görmək. Bir daha salam.
Karşılıklı ekspertləri də
Yes,
salamlayıram.
it's good to see you. Let me turn on my camera. Yes, my greetings, Andrei Yasek,
Bu mövzu çox
colleagues.
əslində aktual yerinə düşübdür.
Yes, very important topic, and it's right on time.
Strategiyanın hazırlanmasına bağlı biz də cəlb olunmuşuq aktiv şəkildə.
We are also part of
Günlərdə düşünürəm ki, sizin özünüzün də şəxsi mülahizələriniz olub, mövqeyiniz olub bu məsələlərdə. Və yəni mövzu
of the process of the national process. So this is the right time.
hazırda o strategiyanın hazırlanması üçün problemlərin diaqnostika mərhələsindəyik ki, müxtəlif mənbələrdən problemləri diaqnostik edib və təbii ki, problemlər üzərindən də qarşıdakı fəaliyyətlərimizi planlaşdıraq.
And
Həm suallar
we can hear what you have and think on what we can do. Yes, it is right time for this event because Jacek, together with the World Bank, is working on Moldova, and Andrzej is also expert in this field, and we have both of them here. the
sənədin yazan yoldaş da burada. Digər də ekspert öz ölkəsində tanınmış və Avropada kənd təsərrüfatı sahəsində uğurlar əldə etmiş
they are the experts that
digər həmkarlarımız
made their own success or gained success in the Europe. So indeed, this is a great opportunity from this perspective as well. Yes, if we're talking about figures and sources of information, definitely that's Statistics Office. This is the main agency, no doubt.
Alternativ başqa mənbələr də var.
There are alternative sources as well, definitely, like taxes, Ministry of Economy have some other sources as well. But if we look at this official data, then yes, this is the statistics. But it's not all about figures. There are certain problems that cannot be reflected in figures. There are certain shortcomings in terms of the collection mechanisms or the experience. The life tells that not everything can be reflected in figures. So that's why we have to apply to other sources, like we did while developing our strategy. So we did our best to engage our regions, the rural areas, in order to engage local sources. The regional offices of the Ministry of Economy helped us a lot. Though, yes, we do have problems in performing surveys in all the areas, but our regional departments have certain experience. They have connections with local authorities. So we use this as an opportunity. And because not every information is as it looks, you have to clarify that. We also use the data from line ministries and use their approaches because they have their own types of problems. I mean, Minister of Labor, Minister of Agriculture, Tourism Agency. They are also closely cooperating with rural areas. And there are also think tanks, if I may say so, that can be used as information. That's Institute of Economics of the National Academy of Sciences, the communication agencies, Economic Development Center. So there are different organizations that I can list more, but we don't have time for mentioning all of them. I just would like to mention that there is a category of agencies that help us to clarify or get figures that we may miss. And also they do their own researches and the data, the outcomes of these researches can be integrated into this process. The ministry is doing an administrative job, but bringing these agencies into this process substantiate our work. So in short, if we're talking about rural development, in terms of figures, that's the Statistics Committee. In terms of activities, we have line ministries, as I mentioned, and other sources like local executive authorities. Also the local offices of the ministries. And I think engaging these stakeholders would be important because some data cannot be reflected in figures. You have to have surveys and observations in order to have a clear picture. That's it from my side. And I'm calling our colleagues to come into this process. Right, thank you. What about international organizations? Do you use that? Yes, of course. our expert mentioned as a source,
gözden keçirəcək. O da mənim üçün
the World Bank, for example,
gözdən keçirəcəyik. Beynəlxalq təcrübədən biz
and this is an opportunity for us. We'll use this as a source of information, of course. If we're interested in international data, yes, of course, we apply to international organizations. We have even partner organizations.
yerli inkişaf, kənd təsərrüfatı,
Yes, we do
istiqamətdə gedir.
cooperate with EU agencies and EU countries, and we definitely, while working on our own documents, we
Tədbirlər salınarkən çalışacağıq real
will take into account the international practices as well. But of course, we have to act based on the reality, because yes, we can look at the experience of
prosesə
international organization or a country and see that it's really good, but
və o məsələlər
given the situation in our country, we may not be able to apply it.
gələn də biz həzər öyrənmiş dərslərimiz var. Müəllim.
We have lessons learned in our strategic roadmap for the previous period,
O sadəcə tədbir olaraq qala bilər o yerində.
because we understand that very advanced elements can stay on the paper only. You have to be realistic. In others, yes, it's good, but can you apply it?
Bizdən qabağa düşünürəm ki, çox irəli getmək, yəni o tədbir
We should not be riding ahead of the horse.
belə deyək də sözü gəlişi gözəl
Just-
fayda xatirinə orada qalması.
You looked at it, sounds modern, sounds technological, sounds great and modern, but it can sound only, it never be implemented.
Xüsusən mən də bilirəm ki, işiniz çox
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ahmedov. You are part of this process. That's a very intensive and a challenging process. You have to finalize it within a short period of time. So that was great overview from your side. I do agree with you that documents can look shiny, but it would actually take some time for us to reach to the point when these shiny moments would be feasible to be implemented. Yes, we have to take into account the realities. So we cannot start with nuclear physics before resolving more basic issues. You are part of this process. You have shared your views. Now we're looking for more colleagues to speak. Please feel yourself free. We have very experienced experts. They are not reflecting one country. They reflect the experience of many countries. So we need to benefit from that. So please use these 3 hours to the maximum possible extent. And that would be useful for you, for your performance as well.
Həyat çox dəyişkəndir, yəni ki, bu gün regional bölmədədirsə, sabah daha yüksək postlarda ola bilər. Onun üçün də çalışıb faydalanmaq lazım.
We indeed have to benefit from that. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Dəftər mərkəzindən də fikir bildirən həmkarımız burdadır. Eldar
We have 3 colleagues from Agro Research.
Sənubər Əliyev, başqa Təranə xanımın mikrofonu açıq. Elvin müəllim, buyurun, sizi dinləyirəm.
Elvin, yes, please.
Hoş gördük sizi bir daha.
Çox sağ olun, müəllim, buyurun.
Well, hi, how are you doing? Yes,
Öz fikirlərinizi bildirmək üçün. Biz də
you're calling us to share our views. Yes, we are regional office of the Ministry of Economy. We use the data from the Statistics Committee, from municipalities. We use the data from local offices of central executive authorities.
bazamız var, ondan istifadə edirik.
We have our own database. We communicate with the tax authorities, and we look at the experience of international organizations. For example, we were looking at the export potential of the citruses, and we used the data from international organizations. Of course, there are certain problems.
Hakimiyyətlərini, yəni onlarda belə müfəssəl
Elvin müəllim, buyurun davam edin. Biz sizi dinləyirik. Buyurun Elvin müəllim.
Məsələn, rayon mərkəzi icra hakimiyyətlərində onlar haqqında, öz rayonları haqqında müfəssəl məlumat bazaları yoxdur. Onlar da məsələn
Yes,
məlumatın statistika komitəsindən
local offices of our organization, we don't have our own database. We have to use some other sources like social infrastructure, kind of sorts of educational health facilities. This is something that we have to apply to relevant agencies because we don't have our own database. That's why we have to do local surveys and monitorings.
Çox sağ olun Elvin müəllim, təşəkkür edirik. Çox maraqlı məsələlər qeyd elədiniz.
Thank you for interesting information. Indeed, very topical. You spoke of municipalities as well.
Birbaşa vətəndaşlarımızla ünsiyyətdədirlər, seçkili orqandırlar. O baxımdan bələdiyyələrdə də prosesə töhfəsi vacibdir. Digər həmkarlarımız.
These are elected bodies. Yes, somebody else.
Deməli qeyd eləyir, burada şərh bölməsinə yazır.
Tarana is writing into the chat.
Şəkildə yazıb iqtisadi rayonlarda statistika şöbələrindən məlumat toplayıram.
That she's collecting information from local offices of the Statistics Committee. If there's a challenging, if it's challenging to collect the data, then I try to apply the relevant departments of local executive authorities. She cannot speak. She has a problem with the microphone. That's why she had to type that. Thank you, Tarana, for that. That you use every opportunity available to express your views. You cannot speak, but thanks. We say it's great to have the democracy that helps us to. Yes, now we hear you. Yes, please. We know you're doing a great study now. Yes, my greetings to everyone. In terms of statistics, yes, we do studies, we do researches. We get a lot of information from Statistics Committee and local offices. But for detailed work, it is difficult to find information. For example, about farms, their performance, performance indicators. This is the challenging information. I know that a lot of work is done at the local level. The data is collected. Our center is doing the best to collect this data, and it is very useful exercise. But in terms of data collected from rural areas, it's just a general level data. They're not very much detailed. For example, you get the data on employed population, but you don't get the breakdown by, let's say, how many of them are engaged into agriculture or which part of the agriculture. Or they financial performance indicators of farmers. They say it is challenging, but what kind of resources are available in farms, what are their sizes, what kind of income they get, which expenses they can cover at their own cost. Some data is missing there. So we have to do a lot of work to cover that. Yes, FAO, World Bank, some other statistics data on the internet. We look at analysis, we look the comparison of different analysis, but of course we mostly apply to statistical sources that we use for comparison purposes. That's it. Yes, thank you. Yes, you have a portal of agrarian market where you get a daily update on the prices of a different products. You are the operator of a data portal. You collected this data. This is very useful. Of course, you mentioned some shortcomings. This is something that we need to look at and improve it. I have faced that myself as well. In 2016, I was the author of a big document and where we had to indicate that statistic base and monitoring system for rural areas should be developed. Even in 2016, we noticed that we have a lot of challenges. We closely cooperated with statistics office, but some information was coming late, or was short or not available. Some assignments that we get, they have to be implemented within a short period of time. And that, of course, affects the quality of the data. Minister of Economy, Agro Research, who else wants to speak, please? Anybody else?
Buyurun, hoştur sizi.
Yes, sure, please. My greetings to every one of you. Our colleagues spoke before me, and I agree with them. Taran also reflected on the principles of work, what kind of sources we use. What I would like to add here, there's certain pieces of information that we have to use in analysis. Some of them that's not accessible from the statistics committee. Besides that, some economic sectors, they dynamically grow and the figures change fast. That's why, as a regional centers, we collect this data directly, not from the statistics, like we apply to municipalities or we apply to farmers. So we have to be active, we have to keep connections. Sometimes you see that in March there was no factory there, but in April factory was constructed, completed and commissioned, for example, and that goes very fast. It's very dynamic, so we have to collect this data ourselves from the source as well, original source. Some agencies, they work with a set of standards. Besides the Central Statistics Office, we work with the local offices of the Statistics Committee. We have local researchers, but some information we collect ourselves from farmers, from entrepreneurs.
Müəyyən məlumatlarda xüsusən də regionlarla bağlı mən özüm də şəxsən praktikada çətinliklə rastlaşdım.
Yes, in terms of getting access to data at regional level, that's a challenging indeed. What they produce domestically, what they export, what they import. Some of them work in rural areas, but they're registered in capital, so all their data goes to capital. It is very important to have data because we get information on non-oil expert. I looked at the internal tourism in order to get the income that population get for the rent of their homes. Not all of them report this data, and we know that some areas are more intensive in terms of tourism, others and as poor reporting is in question, the touristically active regions look like touristically passive.
Abdullah müəllim, buyurun, sizi dinləməkdən şad olarıq. Buyurun Abdullah müəllim.
Mən də
Yes, Abdullah, you want to say something, please? Our previous colleagues spoke already. I would like to add a couple more things.
Son illərdə mən bu Avropa İttifaqının yəni layihələr və digər
Especially, I would like to mention the EU projects where we had a participatory approach, meaning that as a part of implementation of a project that I'm talking, we have identified persons that are active in agriculture, but they were not obvious in the statistics. So all this, when we started our project, we had, let's say, 5 entrepreneurs in the course of the project, and then by the end of the project, we had 20 of them, meaning we established, for example, associations. We identified 5 farmers engaged into one process, but after seeing the benefit of this project, they brought in some other farmers, and they created an association, and the number of members of this association was growing. Yes, the data is fragmented, is not complete, and I think this is because the business practices are not established fully yet. But I think through these projects and through different initiatives, people will understand that it makes more sense, it's more beneficial to get united, to share the data. In foreign countries, this attitude is slightly different. As a part of the EU training, we visited Lithuania, for example. They have regional development centers already. They run all these technicalities in terms of development strategy and management of its execution. So EU attitude is that collect data locally, not from the center, and I mean from the grassroots if you talk about problems of the regions, collect this information from the regions on the spot, because they are the best to know their problems.
Yani bunu əlavə etmək istədim sadəcə.
That's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Çox sağ olun, Abdullah müəllim, təşəkkür edirəm.
Yes, thank you, Abdullah, for your valuable contribution.
Aqrar Tədqiqatlar Mərkəzindən Səmud
Sanutber also in writing mentioned that we were collecting our data on certain products. Yes, we used the data from Statistics Committee, the Customs Committee in terms of import and export. They also have own database on the market prices. FAO is also a valuable source of information. Trade map, this is recently very much referenced the data source. But trade map is mostly based on the we have some actual problems. If we were speaking now more than 20 minutes, we can conclude. If nobody wants to say anything, we can summarize this discussion. So, I think everybody spoke. Because you work in the same field, we work in the same country. So I think we can conclude our discussions now.
Thank you very much, Professor Hussein, for your great moderation. Thank you very much, participants, for your contributions. So now the summary of the discussion will make after 10 minutes break, and the next session will discuss the methods and means of data collecting and processing. Your discussion was really very great. So I believe that we are going to have a good summary as well. So we'll meet again after the break, 11:10. Do you agree, Jacek?
Yes, yes. I think we need 10 minutes to recapitulate the discussion. But let me also add before we close for 10 minutes that if there are any voices extraordinary, or you want to share with us or your thoughts that you find about the subject that we talked about, we will have an open discussion session by the end of today. So there will be another opportunity. If you feel there is something to add extraordinarily, there will be an opportunity. And during that open discussion, I would like to share with you a couple of my thoughts about what you said about the sources of information, because I think it's worth to underline a couple of issues. But this will be during the open discussion
session.
I think yes, it's time.
Okay, so Professor Ramil Hussein, what will be your wrap up? What will be your conclusions from the discussion which you moderated before the break?
Okay, thank you. Hörmətli həmkarlar.
So, dear colleagues, we have 23 total participants, and I hope we can start now. I have to mention here that 8 colleagues expressed their views, like a little bit more than 1/3 of our participants. I hope we will be more active. But as a summary, I can say that we have representatives from Minister of Agriculture, from Minister of Economy, and the first source of information, it's a statistical committee. As was mentioned by the majority of participants, it's a first line of information. But besides that, each agency, depending on the line of activities, they apply it to the relevant institutions of their own line ministry. Like those who work in the Ministry of Economy, they say that they apply to the Ministry of Economy, institutions, local offices, etc. Then the next level, the third level, that's line ministries. Then Minister of Economy already applies to the Minister of Agriculture, or Minister of Agriculture applies to the Minister of Economy or the other agencies, etc. Along with that, the fourth level is the international organizations. For the region, we're using the World Bank data, TRIAD map, FAO data, for more detailed information on our regions, the local executive authorities are used. This means the local offices of the central government and the municipalities, but still this is not a complete source of information, but still they can play a role of a source of information. Some colleagues spoke of using the think tankers, research centers, as it was mentioned by representatives of Minister of Economy. These think tankers, the organizations, they also have experience of conducting surveys, relevant institutions of the National Academy of Sciences, and these survey centers, they are not only used to conduct surveys, but the ready surveys, available surveys are also used. Professional associations also can be used as a source of information. And sometimes, of course, applying to the source of information, like to farmers, etc., it's another option. Like agri-research center staff mentioned that FADN is also used there. We're also this is also used as a source of information. And this data is used for analysis purposes. Yes, this was a summary. All the colleagues are professionals. They well know where from they can get this information. That's really good. Right now, we're more struggling for finding the missing information rather than getting any information. Statistical committee now is expanding its sources they are publishing annual books. Ministry of Economy also provides reports on implementation of regional development, sustainable development state program. Well, would like to clarify now that basically, as it was mentioned in the presentation as well, we have similarities with Europe, as I understand, also use the similar source of information, but we have challenges in terms of the accuracy of data at village level, and improving this data collections, data sources, and data accessibility would be very important. I hope that my colleagues would agree with my summary. So we have moved all the way from the Statistics Committee down to professional associations. Thank you for your information. Andrzej?
Thank you very much, Professor Ramil Hussein. It was a great summary. So really, we had a very fruitful discussion, and you moderated it very well. And your summary, from my point of view, was great. I don't know if anyone would like to add something, but maybe we can do it as Jacek proposed, that on the end of seminar we'll have the session where we'll try to discuss any additional issue. So as you said, for sure, in fact, the challenge is not the information, the data which you have access to, but the challenge is the missing information. And that's true that in the case of agriculture, the access to data is difficult, because farmers are selling their products, buying different materials for farm without receipts and not keeping account. So it's not easy to find information. You need some very sophisticated mechanism and tools to collect such information. It was the reason why this farm accountancy data system network in the European Union was invented, just to fill this gap of missing information about agriculture production and conditions of farm, and about FADN, this farm accountancy data system. We'll talk during the next webinar. I really appreciate what many of you said, but one phrase for Mr. Faris Ahmedov really struck me very much, that it's not only about figures. So figures is not enough. We need to find a way to interpret them, to use them in our work, in our work, in our daily work and strategic and programming work as well. So as you said, sometimes it's difficult to find any information, and some informations are missing. I do believe that our project will contribute a little to fill this gap. And Jacek, would you like to add something now, or keep your time for the end?
As I said, I suggest that we continue with the presentations in the next subject, and then we will have time during open discussion to contribute more.
Great. Thank you very much. So let's move to next presentation. So already we made the summary of the discussion between the break, and now we are moving to the collection and analysis of data for the needs of the national strategic plan preparation. And in this session, we'll have also try to have a discussion about needs for the purpose of increasing farm income. This is one of the objectives of national strategic plan. So what should be done to increase farm income? On this scheme, it is in Polish, but nonetheless, I decided to show it to you. This a scheme of participants or participating institutions in the process of preparation of the strategic plan for Common Agriculture Policy for the next programming period. So during this preparation of the strategic plan, of course, the key role played the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, the leading department of the Common Agriculture Policy, a different departments responsible for specific subjects. It was a team created for preparation, the plan and coordination, all necessary work. So it was thematic groups in the National Rural Development Network, among them a thematic group for leader, and other thematic group, among them a thematic group of National Rural Development Network related to innovation. So we have a network of institutions related or subordinated to the Minister of Agriculture, Agency for Restructuring and Modernization of Agriculture, and that is a paying agency for Common Agriculture Policy in Poland, National Center for Supporting of Rural Areas, Agriculture Advisory Center, both national and regional. Then we have, of course, European institution, the European Commission, Council, and European Parliament. Then we have other related national institutions and the different ministers, the Minister of Climate and Environment, the Minister of Family and Social Policy, the Minister of Development, Labor and Technology, Minister of Finance, Minister of Infrastructure, territorial self-government, mostly on the regional level, but not only, and other institutions, for example, the institution responsible for the water management. Then we have non-governmental organizations, and many different organizations, among them a local action group acting under leader. But many other related to local development, animals, well-being, environment, climate, and so on. Then we have different type of farmers organizations. The most important one is Agriculture Chamber, which is a very influential organization. The producers group, different type of farmers farmers, let's say, or organization or association, association of the young farmers and rural women organizations. And last but not least, science and research. So research institution and also agriculture universities contributed to this process. So I decided to show you this scheme just to visualize how complex is the process, how many institutions and people are involved in this process. So what is in fact this process about? So we have a current existing situation, but we want to change it. We want to improve it. So we need to define what we want to achieve and find a way for achieving those objectives which we define. So the baseline, the current situation, the starting point, we need to understand it. So we need information. We need different type of diagnosis and analysis, among them this SWOT analysis, which we will discuss a little bit more in details in the while. In this process, when we try to define the desired state, what we want to achieve, we need to define objectives. We discussed the goals and objectives in one of the previous webinars. So we need to define general objectives and the tailored objectives and identify what should be done for achieving those objectives. And then we need to define financial resources, tools and institutions which help us to achieve those objectives for improving the current situation and get the state which we want to achieve. So it is the logic behind this programming mechanism and program implementation. Of course, to be sure that we are going in the right way, we need a good monitoring system that we see that really situation is improving. So in the diagnosis processes, we have a lot of European Union materials, among them mostly European Commission. We have a factual analysis, information sheets related to specific subjects. We have diagnosis of the area covered by the plan, and we have original diagnosis. Despite the fact that we have one national program, those regional diagnoses played a very important role in the process of the program preparation. I am using program and plan with the same meaning in this presentation. Diagnosis of the area covered by the plan according to the context indicators. So in the process of diagnosis, this context indicators, which we discussed on the one of our webinar previously, those context indicators are organizing factor for a big part of the diagnosis. So the SWOT analysis is very important element, as I said. The SWOT is done in this way that we have synthetic view of the SWOT, this SWOT table, but behind of it there is a very detailed descriptive approach. So explain what's behind the sentences, the words which are in the table, and those descriptive description is done on the base of the research. So research material, the serious research process is behind this very simple, it seems to be a very simple table. So I'm now showing you a SWOT analysis only for one objective, and this whole document is over 50 pages, and it is only for one objective, for the objective to support decent farm incomes and resilience across the Union in order to increase food security. It's still the project. The Minister of Agriculture presented the project, and this project is under discussion and improvement. So we have this classical SWOT table: strengths, weaknesses, and of course opportunities and threats. So it is presented in the tables. So what among opportunities increases demand for food, included high quality local origin, the growing need for use of the potential of agriculture to counteract adverse climate changes. Agriculture could play an important role for keeping CO2, for catching carbon. So a lot of opportunities, but also the threats. And at the first place, negative climate changes resulting in increased production risk and production cost in agriculture. So because of climate change, there is a risk that cost of production could increase significantly. Declining availability of mineral resources used in the production of fertilizers and water. The shortage of water in many places of the world is a big challenge. Cost advantage of the world agriculture over EU agriculture due to differences in environmental restrictions. So because of the specific environmental restriction in the EU, the agriculture production could be much more costly than in other parts of the world, and then the competition could be a challenge. So it is this synthetic table of the SWOT analysis, but behind of it is in Polish. It's it's description. What we understand by those sentences used there. So each point is well described, and behind of it there is a very detailed analysis. And quite often we use this Polish farm accountancy and data network as the best source of information related mostly to agriculture. So SWOT tables and deep analysis and research material, which is the base for those analyses. So very important element is to define what we want to achieve, and we have a different approach to it. The one way is the top define. That, for example, state or European Union could decide what we want to achieve, and we define our goals and objectives. On the opposite side is the bottom-up approach that those goals are developed, defined during the consultation process, and the local communities or farmers organization would define what they want to achieve, what they want to change. But there is also a possible third way, that we have the top defined general framework, but details and the sub-goals, sub-objectives could be defined in this bottom-up approach. And quite often we have this situation that general framework is defined, but details could be decided on the lower level. In fact, it is the case of the European Union Common Agriculture Policy programming processes, that those general frameworks decided at the EU level, and then the member states could have they have a quite great influence on the sub goals, sub objectives, and also in the regions, people on some aspects could decide it as well. So it is let's say a practical case how it works. So for our Polish strategic plan, we define 9 objectives, and we'll take a look closer for 2 of them. To support farm incomes and resilience in order to increase food security, and objective 8, promoting employment, growth, social inclusion, and local development in rural areas. So I choose those 2 because in fact for me they're key, because the farm development of agriculture and non-farm activities in rural areas, promoting employment, growth, and social inclusion. So it is about agriculture development, and this is about non-agriculture rural development. So we'll move to it later on, but now again I would like to ask Professor Ramil Hussain, sorry for mistaking your name, Ramil, I will correct it immediately. I would like to ask you, try to identify what are needs, what should be done to support doesn't farm incomes and make farms more resilient in order to increase food production and food security in Azerbaijan. So please try define what should be done, try to agree of several needs and describe them briefly. Professor Ramil Hussain, the floor is yours. Please moderate this second discussion as well. Thank you.
Çox sağ olun Ancim. Mən də sizə təşəkkür edirəm. Maraqlı məsələlər qoydunuz və indi əsas məsələ
Thank you. Touching upon interesting issues. What is important here is that you're putting right question. Indeed, farmers should get a decent income, and that reflects on the food security. So if they don't have sufficient income, then they will not be interested to continue doing farming on the next season. So they need to get income that they deserve. And when they do what they're supposed to do, they contribute to food security. This is a very important issue for Azerbaijan. Back in 2001, we have adopted food security state program. Minister of Economy contributed substantially to this program. Minister of Agriculture also was definitely engaged in terms of improving the farmers' income and ensuring the farm resilience and farm income, food security. Unfortunately, we can't hear voice of Tarana, but she continues writing in chat. Thank you, Tarana, for being so active. I hope that during next webinar, you will have your microphone working so that we would hear your voice. So, dear colleagues, please go ahead. Food security, farmers, income. You've been part of this process. You've been part of all these discussions, presentations from the very beginning. So what kind of support mechanisms should be there? What is needed? This is basically your job, if I may say so. You work with Minister of Economy, you work with Minister of Agriculture, you work at the local levels. The whole objective is to improve the well-being and the business environment for farmers. We want to hear all of you in order to identify these needs, and I'm sure our foreign experts will also share their experience. Faiz was first during the previous discussion, but now we need another driving force, or maybe we don't need any driving force. You should just jump into these discussions. Eldar is usually known for his interesting contribution. Other colleagues? Yes, please. Feel yourself free. Yes, please, Abdullah Karimov. Oh, this is the very broad topic. This is the field that this agriculture is a sector that always have a need, and when we talk to farmers, we individually listen to them. The major problem that everybody has, that's market, access to market. Being able to sell for an acceptable price your product. Yes, we now creating special areas, agro parks, etc. And the small farms, of course, cannot compete with them. And compared to them, the cost of production of these small farms is higher, and they cannot compete with the bigger farms.
öldürür beləliklə.
and that kills the motivation.
Və bundan da savayı təbii ki, xüsusilə
Besides that,
sahibkarların maliyyələşdirilməsi mənbəsinə gəldikdə,
source of financing for entrepreneurs, yes, there are certain problems. Of course, they cannot get grants, but they get low interest credits from the state. But in the rural areas, as these credits are provided by banks, they cannot provide for collateral.
Və bundan da savayı deyərdim ki, sahibkar bu kiçik fermerlər, xüsusilə də istehsal etdikləri
Besides that, the small farmers, they're deprived of opportunity of bringing their products to the market.
Təcrübəsi və kifayət qədər bilik və bazar araşdırma potensialı olan bir neçə böyük sahibkar ətrafında kiçik fermerlərin birləşməsi bəlkə.
So one of the opportunities is the small farmers getting united around big farmers or farms that have good experience in marketing and production. Life experience shows that some businessmen want to build an agricultural processing facility and sell them under their brand, and they talk to local farmers for raw materials. And this businessman will establish his or her own market for selling these products. And that may stimulate the small farmers in getting united and be competitive compared to big farmers, big producers. But the problem here that the cost of production in these cases sometimes is high, and because it depends on the equipment that you use. Right now you use modern irrigation equipment, agricultural equipment. Some farmers missing the knowledge or skills about that, or others are missing the finances to use such opportunities. So we're talking about lack of knowledge, lack of skills, and lack of finances. And another lacking part is the motivation to search, to study. Yes, very important fact you mentioned, the processing facility that can help mobilize farmers, can act as a market for farmers. And you know better than others that yes, we do undertake certain activities to support what is I've tried to explain to our expert that there is one point is like our farmers have to pay sort of a soil fee. It is some sort of it's a sort of a tax, a land tax. Besides that, this land tax was very small, and state provides some subsidies for that. This is all done to ensure the food security, in order to make sure that we would be able to provide certain agricultural products by ourselves. And these are the activities that are aimed at improving the situation with agriculture. Some economists, they talk about fair pricing, but all of that is done in order to create an opportunity for farmers to sell at more appropriate price and get their income. So anybody else, please feel yourself free to express yourself, because you are the best ones to know this. You are in this process. Yes, yes, please. Elvin Nemetli, please. There is one thing that we can keep on mentioning repeatedly. We need to do a thorough analysis to identify the minimum consumer baskets, what is included into this basket, this smart analysis in terms of the environmental situation. Really SWOT, we need to do a real thorough SWOT analysis of what kind of products can be produced in which regions and to which extent, why it should be done like this. The subsidies you mentioned, I think the subsidies should be produced to the final product. I think this should be the right approach to that. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Mentioned the right point. You talk about specialization, raising income. Decent income and respectively the food security. If Eldar, he's writing his research in this field, and it would be interesting to hear his opinion. Eldar Kuliyev and other colleagues, please go ahead. Yes. For the sustainable growth of the agriculture, definitely we need to support the farms in rural areas and increase their income. When you talk about specialization, meaning identifying which products are more suitable for the regions, now it is not recognized as a specialization that in one area you produce wheat, in other you produce grapes, etc. Now the concept is different. It's not just only producing it, but it's also processing there. So, meaning that if this area produces wheat, then it's not just about producing wheat. There should be mills, there should be flour production, there should be some other accompanying arrangements. Yes, subsidies are very important, and exceptions are very important. Yes, agriculture is not the main source of income. It is a field that is important from the food security point of view. It may have a negative balance, but state is still tries, or if you wish, obliged to support it, to keep it up. Applies grace credits, provides subsidies. There are opportunities for the development of agricultural and farm business. The local opportunities allow for such development. Only during Soviet times, land did not belong to farmers. It used to be owned by farmers, but then it became kolkhoz, sovkhoz, it belonged to nobody. And now, after the regaining the independence, the land goes back to farmers. After these land reforms, This has led to the breakdown of the system that was created for 70 years in Soviet Union. Like one territory of the country was specialized in cotton production. They were producing cotton and they transporting to the other area to making a product. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, these relations were broken up, and it was not already competitive, and the farmers themselves, they changed to a different situation. What has resulted that with that reduce the income, or what do you propose for increase the income of farmers? No, that did not impact the income of farmers. It just, what I wanted to say that the demand-driven production was broken up by this specialization. We had these problems with the vegetables, with the onions, potatoes. For example, in 2011, there was mass production of onion, but they couldn't sell it. They faced the damage in pandemic, during pandemic, in grape production was wasted. Vegetables are mostly used for, let's say, weddings that we used to have before the pandemic, but now we don't have these wedding ceremonies. All these vegetables were wasted, for example. These are the problems that we're facing now. And the market here is limited, basically, the internal market. So one of the needs, as you say, as I understand, to increase the income of farmers is to determine the market. Is that right? Yes, but not only. There are some, besides identifying the market, there are certain challenges. Because there should be mechanisms of bringing this food to the market as well. Because there are certain intermediaries that create problems. They buy it cheap, sell it high. If the farmers would have some stimulus, they could do the export as well. They could have established the relations with each other. For example, in Kuba Khachmaz, there is a buy and sell union. They could get connected with the buy and sell organization of other region, and they could exchange the products, for example. I mean, relations between regions, and this could affect the income, right? Yes, of course. That has a direct impact. Because one of the problems is to sell the product at a suitable price. There are many problems there. Yes, thank you. You touched upon very important issues. I know that you are in the center of this process, and you know these problems, you know the ways how to find a way out of it. Besides that, Taran also wrote here some thoughts. As you mentioned, we have a food security agency. This is the agency that is directly is responsible for the food security policy in the country. This is one of the 4 important components of our agricultural strategy. Yes, first we should have farms. Second, we should have their incomes. Third, these agricultural products should be accessible everywhere, and it should be safe. Part of that is handled by the Food Security Agency. This is, as was mentioned. Also, Tarana says that small and medium-sized producers, they can't access the market. They either waste the market or sell it at much lower price. That makes it difficult to have a state registry, and as a result, farmers cannot use soft credits. Logistics is missing actually, so that good quality products cannot be exported. That kills the motivation of farmers to be engaged into agricultural activities. Accessing the market, especially foreign market, affects the income of farmers.
Hər birimiz müşahidə elədik ki, ciddi şəkildə
Yes, indeed. We have witnessed that ourselves on the examples of apples and tomatoes. When we look at the figures, one problem with one product affects all the others as well. Last March, we have exported $19 million worth tomatoes. This year was only 7 million worth of export. And this is all related to the access to market. Yes, we need to work more on identifying the needs. If anybody else wants to speak, yes, please. Those who spoke, they touched upon important issues. Anybody else? Anybody else? We're happy to listen to you. Or if we have exhausted everything.
Elbrus Rastamali rose the hand.
Elbrus müəllim, buyurun, biz sizi dinləyirik.
Salam bir daha.
Yes, hello again. Along with what has been mentioned, when we spoke about the needs of farmers.
Yani 100 hektarlarla mesela kənd təsərrüfatı sahəsində təsərrüfatlarda özlərinin strateji anbarları da var.
We, for example, have situations that there are certain farmers or businessmen that have their own cold chain and refrigerators. So basically, year from year, this situation changes, and it's not a big deal for big farmers. Only the small farmers, they have a problem, and it appears that farmers all over the country face the same problems. One of the major problems of them is, besides the sales, the infrastructure is a problem. For example, everybody knows that irrigation is a serious issue. That is why the small farmers have big problems. This water resources distribution and management is not done appropriately. Yes, sales of products is very important, but it's not only about it. Knowledge and skills of our farmers is a problem, and if we talk about sales, then marketing is marketing knowledge is another issue. It's not just about taking the stuff physically to the market. There is some more. They don't know how to market their products, how to sell, how to access the sales channels. That's what I wanted to say. Yes. Thank you. Indeed, important things as well. So what we can conclude out of this discussion that most of the problems are the problems of small farmers. And in order to fix the food security issues, deal with food security, we need to deal with these problems. But we know that Italy is an example of greatly operating small farms. Yes, Faris, you wanted to say something? I had an idea actually. If we're limited in time, I don't want to take your time actually. No, please go ahead. Discussion is the key, please. So productivity and income, that's what we need to support, right? Yes, what are the needs in order to ensure the decent income and the food security? Right. Our colleagues from Ministry of Economy also shared their views. Yes, we more or less are familiar with all these problems, like especially for small farmers, there are problems with accessing the financial resources, productivity is a bit of problem. That's because of the lack of agricultural knowledge and agricultural technique, irrigation problem, with getting the relevant seeds, etc. So all of these can add to the increase of income of farmers. But another issue of accessing financial resources and the market, we work on each of them on a fragmented basis. Yes, 10 years ago, it was the same. It is the same again, but no substantial change taking place. Why? Because it's all fragmented. Why now we say that big farmers are not facing that? Now we are focused on small farmers. Why do small farmers face these problems? Because yes, we did land reforms, we distributed land to farms, great, liberalization, etc. But one farmer has, in average, 2-3 hectares of land, plus limited knowledge and skills, doesn't know much about good seeds and agro-technique. Yes, what kind of income you can expect? Yes, you can talk about marketing, market access, etc. For so many years after this land reforms, with all these support mechanisms, we don't get any improvement. At least we can understand that from the general statistics. I think the core of the problem is to need to ensure the cooperation of farmers. I don't know, call it whatever you want, union, cooperation, cooperative, association, whatever. If we're talking about 300 farms in one village, it would be much better to have 20 farms in the same village, and we can pass, if they can get united around one leader, then it would be easier to get access to finances, etc., even without support of the state. Institutionalization is required. This is a model that should be imposed. If we will not stimulate, if we will not promote, advocate for that, nothing is going to happen. Farmers with land, small farmers, they will not be able competitive, and they will sell it to big farmers.
Yəni ona qoyulan xərc, çəkilən zəhmət o gəlirlərə kifayət eləmir.
They will understand that the expenses that they make are not enough to get a return. Yes, we have heard about the history. Yes, land belonged to farmers before Soviet Union, but belonged to big farmers. The land was belonging to rich family, the villages, and all the small poor villages, they were working for these villages. After the Soviet Union, it was nationalized, collective farms. Why it was successful? Because there was an agronomist, there was an institutional arrangement, professionals were making decisions on what kind of fertilizers, what kind of seeds, etc. We did reforms. And now, farmers without any knowledge and skills, they got their land. What their decisions are based on is that, okay, let's make wheat this year. I will use less water, less efforts, and this is approximate income that I will have. This is the last resort. I mean, let's produce wheat because it's effortless, less expenses, and based on that, they get some little income. I think union, institutionalization of farmers may resolve. I mean, collectives, you propose collectives. Yes, because in many villages, land is in hand of small farmers. Some of the knowledges they cannot just absorb, you know. But if these farmers would be engaged in the production only, no, we're not expecting that they will do a scientific research on anything, but of course, but some people are good in agricultural production. Others are good in researching foreign market. Some of them are interested in creating relations with supermarkets. It should be organized. All these farmers should be organized in the form of, let's say, like in European cooperatives, and there would be a leader, should be a leader that will do the distribution of responsibilities. That, out of 10 members of cooperative, 1 will be agronomist, others 5 will be producers, 1 will be dealing with markets, other 1 will be doing the finance. If they don't have any expert within the cooperative, they will bring in somebody from outside. That will improve their own life and improve food security as well, because the ultimate goal is the food security. Yes, thank you. Thank you for this valuable contribution. You actually made even summary of our discussions. I think we can close this session with this, because only Taran mentioned that would be interesting to note that agricultural products in towns, they're sold cheaper than in rural areas. This is another interesting fact. We're doing 30 minutes instead of 20. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Hussein. Thank you very much to all participants for your great contribution to the discussion. And now we are making a 10 minutes break for glass of tea or cup of coffee. So let's meet 12:25.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. We're opening the next session 10:25. Thank you. Ramil, great discussion. I'm very, very happy and very proud of the event that we conduct today.
Jacek, but we still have one more presentation.
Yeah, I know.
Brief
I
one,
know.
yes.
I know that.
Yeah,
but
okay.
to the moment.
Oh,
Because
great.
we managed to stimulate people to discuss, and what they contribute is very, very valuable and shows that there is a potential, but it's not so far. It's not yet considered the modernization of the sectors. Of rural sector needs a lot of modernization, and modernization is not only technical. It's not only about infrastructure. It's also about modernizing people's minds and also modernizing the approach of the policy to the development of rural areas and agriculture itself, farming. I mean, if you remember, Andrzej, we passed that moment 20 years ago. We had a very, very similar problem.
Yes.
Everything was so little dispersed, people being very fundamental, conservative, looking for, even today you will find plenty of farmers acting like that. But in fact, the most of the commercial farmers now, they are different people. There is a new generation. So this is not only a problem of the policy, but also generational issue. Yeah,
for sure. But on this stage, it is important that the development policies are not pushing out those small farmers from agriculture.
Yes.
What is needed are pulling forces, which they pull them out to other activities.
Yes.
So that's my only recipe for rural development. Create jobs outside of agriculture. Otherwise,
Yeah, Andrzej, but look, I think this is also important that Azerbaijan, and not only Azerbaijan, also neighboring countries are supported by international organizations, rich countries that want change because, not change, that want to prevent the environment from damages caused by, for instance, climate change or industry. So this is also an important part of that, to pay farmers, to gratify them, but not for nothing. Not for nothing, not just because they are farmers. No, they provide a service. They provide a service to protect the nature, to protect the landscape. Yeah.
Fully agree with you. The Common Agriculture Policy, among other things, this food security and ensuring the fair income to farmers. From my point of view, it's not ideal, but in fact a very good tool to compensate, to pay farmers for public good delivery. For public services, taking care of environment, keeping farms as a part of culture or landscape. Yes, of course, but you need to define it and be ready to pay for it. Yes.
Yeah. Andrzej, let's start.
Okay.
That's a very good point. I think we can, what we've been talking today, perhaps we can summarize in a short bullet, in concise bullets for the final number 8, because we should give some sort of guidelines for the future about that. Also, all right.
So
thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacek. Now I would like to ask Professor Ramil Hussein to make a brief summary of the second discussion. So Ramil, the floor is yours. Microphone, please. Microphone.
Çox sağ ol cənab Angi. Mən də təşəkkür edirəm. Hörmətli həmkarlar, bildiyiniz kimi müzakirəmizdə xeyli məsələ müzakirə olundu. Abdullah müəllim, Elvin müəllim, Eldar müəllim, Elbrus müəllim, Fariz müəllim, Təranə xanım.
Dear colleagues, we have heard about many different issues and Fariz even made a summary of what is needed in Azerbaijan, and we saw that major problems are at the small farm levels in terms of the income, in terms of the product market, and the next stage was proposed, the cooperation union of these farmers in order to deal with the income and food security. So mobilizing them into one organization, that's sort of mobilizing them to get united in order to become stronger, and actually inputs for the development would be more effective in that way as well. And in terms of specialization, if we're talking about, it is not just about production, it's also about processing, which is another factor adding to the increase of incomes. Yes, we have heard a number of problems, and one of the leading of them was the access to markets, water, irrigation, especially for small farms, lack of knowledge and skills. Another factor that affects the income. Limited access to market in terms of limited marketing knowledge is also a problem. Most of these problems are, so to say, focused in small farms. So they cannot get access to seeds, they cannot access to fertilizers, finances, water, etc. So in short, they're not competitive. In order to make them competitive, we need to motivate them to get voluntarily united. I think this is the short summary of what we have discussed.
Thank you very much, Professor Hussein. So it was a very, as Jacek already said, the discussion was really great, and Professor Hussein did a very good job as usual. So now we are moving to the last session already. We made a summary of the discussion, and so I will show you what needs are defined for those objectives in a strategic plan in Poland. For Objective 1, to support decent farm income and resilience across the Union in order to increase food security and promoting employment growth, social inclusion, and local development in rural areas. So, in fact, let's say the biggest part of the answer to those small farms issue is here. So promoting employment outside of farming. So what needs are defined under the objective to support decent farm incomes and resilience? So increasing individual income in agriculture in order to provide farmers with a decent standard of living and provide equal development, economic and social opportunities. And is the one need. The second one is reducing the differences in income between farms of various sizes.
Burada biz aynı zamanda
Farmers issue is behind it as well. Different direction of agriculture production and between farms operating in area with different natural conditions. So Mr. Farid Ahmedov said that in the case of small farms, when they just produce grain, there is no chance for income. I understand that behind his comments was that if such small farm would focus on more labor-intensive cultivation, vegetables, and so on, even from 2 or 3 hectares, it's possible to have a decent income. Maintaining production in agriculture production sectors that are particularly important for economic, social, and environmental reasons. So it is this aspect of food security. And the full list of defined needs are on this page here. So those 3 we already had on the PowerPoint presentation, and others are development of agriculture production using environmentally friendly methods, counteracting the decline in profitability of agriculture production on farms keeping animals. It's the big issue because the animals production is less and less profitable, or even it's hard to have a profit from animal production. In order to reduce the pressure on the environment through a more and even territorial distribution of livestock production, so without concentration of the livestock production, reducing the differences in income between farms of different sizes. So we already had it, maintaining production in agriculture production sector, which are particularly important, and so on. So ensuring stability of farm incomes by mitigating the effects of price risk. So it is a very, very important element. Protect or find the mechanism for ensuring stability of farm income despite of market volatility, and increasing individual income and so on. So there's a full list of needs behind this objective 1. So let's now take a look at the objective 8, promoting employment, growth, social inclusion, and so on. So improving high performance internet access. So today it's really one of the key conditions for development. Of course, you need also electricity and so on, but access to internet, it's very, very, very important element. Improving access to public infrastructure, such as roads and so on. Improving access to water and sewage management. Improving access to tourist and recreational infrastructure. Improving access to public transport services. Public transport is very, very important from the point of view of access to the labor market, to school, hospitals, and so on. Improving access to public services in the fields of care services, healthcare, culture, and cultural heritage, and few more. So, but when we have this list of needs, then the big challenges define. Okay, we have so long list. Everything is needed. Everything is so important, but we have, as usually, we have limited financial resources. We have a limited institutional capacity. So we need to decide which needs are most and more important. So I will briefly show you the method of prioritizing needs. So in this method, at the beginning, you prepare the complete list of needs, whichever you find reasonable, you put on the list. But in the next step, you try to assess them from the point of view of importance. So in the case of this strategic national program, of course, was from the point of view of this national point of view, importance of the needs. But so we have 4 criteria, and then criterion 1 is the consistency with the need, with the need with the EU strategies policies, with this general framework. The second, consistency of the need with Polish strategies, Polish policies. Then the next criterion is the complexity of the need. And the last one, significance of the need resulting from the opinion of social partners. So in this 4 criterion, there's very much this bottom-up approach reflected. And on the basis of those criteria, the ranking of the needs is prepared as the result of this prioritization. So in this way, you define the critical needs, most important needs, which should we address financial resources and institutional capacity. Then required needs. And on the third part, desirable needs. So it will be good to fulfill them, but after fulfilling those critical and required needs. So the methodology, you will be provided this methodology, how it is done, that this preparation of the complete list, then assessment of the importance of the needs at the national level, on the basis of EU strategies, national strategies, complexity and opinion of social partners. Additionally to those 4 criteria was the 5th one, and the possibility of meeting the needs outside of common agriculture policy. This criterion was not scored, but assessed, that you could see that, okay, we are not able to do it from this point of this resources, but maybe it could be done from other resources. So on the base of those criteria, the ranking was made, and those critical needs, required needs, and desired needs have been defined, and the hierarchy of the needs at a regional level was also consulted with our region our voivodeships. In this way, try to identify which needs are most relevant, most important for given regions, and the result of this process, the list of the criteria had been prepared. So you could have a chance to take a look on this methodology yourself. And on the end, I would like to briefly show you. I will not go through the whole presentation, but I would like to show you the example of the Austrian experience about this needs analysis and intervention logic prepared by Federal Ministry of Austria. So those are authors on. I will just screen it to you. As you see, the stakeholder involvement is very important. We'll take a look on some of those slides. You see this picture similar to those one which I presented to you before the break. Who is involved in this process? So we have the interest group, science and research, non-governmental organization, Australian Parliament and government, Council of Ministers and other ministers, and so on. So because it is according to the European Union methodology, so it is a similar way. But again, you can see how complex it's this process. So it is the project contractor committee, strategic project coordinator, and project team working on different areas. So the stakeholders involvement, events organized by National Rural Network. We have European Rural Development Network, and every member state have national rural network. In the case of Austria, this national rural network organize conferences and dialogues with different stakeholders because of So the same, the SWOT analysis, needs assessment, and then intervention strategy. So for each specific objective, targets, milestone, financial allocation, and description of intervention. In the case of this process of project strategic plan preparation, most of the member states are on this stage. This one is under development. So intervention strategy and specific objective targets and financial allocation for each intervention. So the SWOT analysis and needs assessment. As you see, the process is quite long and quite intensive. So in Austria, they identify 52 needs. So I think that I will finish on this, and So you can take a look closer on this Austrian case yourself. Tools for achieving goals and meeting needs. So financial allocation. In the program, you define which needs you want to address, what measures you would like to apply, and you need to define what monitoring you will use to see that your measures are really addressing needs and improving situation. And then you have implementing institutions. The key usually is the paying agency, but not only. So, dear participants, today we have a brief summary of the previous webinars. We have information about what kind of sources are available, and we discuss identification of goals of the program, diagnosis, and defining the needs and prioritizing them, and achieving program goals through all necessary measures and instruments. And we have a very good two discussions about what are available sources of information for the diagnosis of the situation and programming in Azerbaijan, and what needs you identify for increasing farmer incomes. So now it's time for final discussions, your comments, questions. Jacek, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think this is the time to open the last discussion, which will not only summarize the last session, but also which would summarize the whole webinar today. But just to open this, let me refer to the last presentation, to the presentation on SWOT analysis. You see this, I don't know whether you are familiar with it, but the SWOT analysis can be used as a tool for building your future in a strategic way, because you can take the policy which can build upon the strength and your capacities that you have. So you concentrate on what you have, your assets, your positive side of your economy, of your social life, whatever you have, whatever assets you have. The other policy can be based on weaknesses. It sounds strange, but it's possible, because it's by concentrating your development on diminishing weaknesses. So if you're weak with the, let's say, education, you concentrate on improving that, refining and developing education. If you're weak because of lack of let's say technical infrastructure, you just build technical infrastructure. This is the political issue. This is a decision to be taken by policymakers, by politicians who are democratically elected and who make decisions. The fourth path for projection is the opportunities. For instance, if you have already good access to export markets, or if you have excellent marketing skills and a lot of marketing specialists, a lot of links and connections, then you build on that. You build on opportunities. So you concentrate on this, what can bring you the most income, the most benefit for the country. It has to be considered from different angles, but it's also part of the thinking about the policy making. And threats are always there. You cannot avoid it. There are wars. There are disasters, natural disasters. There are different problems with trade, stock exchange. You know, this is the problem. But you can build your strategy on building your future threats by concentrate on beating them down, and this is one of the paths, as I say. Of course, in the real life, there is no one way. You always have to balance. You have to put on the scales and just to measure what can be the most suitable, but always consider that for strength, weaknesses, opportunities, as threat, not only as a tool, but also as a means that you can use to and think about during building the strategy and for development, and the also programming, in fact. Another issue that I wanted to say is that we tackled today very important problem, which is information. And let me say, a lot of information in European Union member states, or all developed countries, in fact, is not only based on figures from statistics, it's based on studies. A thorough, numerous thorough studies on different aspects of our life. Not especially when we're talking about rural development, we are not talking about the economy. I think Faris Ahmedov, he raised a couple of issues that are very important, because he talked about economy, about social problems, about farm structures, about land structures. You know, different aspects have to be not only reflected by figures, which are important, but they don't give you a real picture. It has to be studied, and I think in Azerbaijan, from what you say, it seems it's needed to be, these studies have to be undertaken by scientists, by researchers, people who can draw attention not only to publicize the problem, but also draw attention of policymakers of very tangible problems that the rural areas are for the country, and the farming community needs are really threatened by the economy, by different aspects of life. And the fourth problem, which has also been raised today, is that I just ask myself a question, whether it wouldn't be bad for the country to develop a separate strategy, agriculture and rural development strategy, like a horizontal, cross-cutting strategy, which will, in fact, covers not only life of rural people, but also influences life of all the Azerbaijan's dwellers, citizens. I think most of the countries in European Union, as Andrzej said, all the countries have to have it. This is obligatory part of our thinking about the future. There are plenty of different strategies. There is not only one strategy, really strategic thinking. And I remember I've been, as Faris said, my experience derives also from working in countries like Moldova or Ukraine or wherever. And they were also in a position to develop their strategic thinking that embraces all the aspects that need to be tackled by the policies for rural areas, what means in fact rural communities. So I think this is important to have this sort of a consistent picture which we talk about. You have a lot of consistent sub-policies, but rural development is cross-cutting issue. It's not just a picture. It's a cross-cutting issue of economy, of natural resources, of industry, of financial issues, numerous aspects. They have to be somehow like a screenshot taken in that strategy, and the strategy should also define the objectives for development in a long-term perspective. This is, I think, at the moment you reach the point where you have a lot of resources, because the country is very rich in different resources, human resources, economical resources. Countryside is fantastic. The problem is, if you have now that picture and understanding of the policymakers, what needs to be done in certain periods of time and its certain sequence of time, this is causing a problem. And it's very good if there is a document that you can refer to in your work, not only as public officers, but also as people who contribute to development of the country. That's my, it's just like Pandora box to open the next discussion. I know we have no time, but yes, please, you're welcome to say your word.
Jacek, I'm afraid that in your intervention was so very much like wrap up, and it's not easy to open a new discussion, I'm afraid. So I propose that we could finish today, and we'll continue our discussions on the next webinars. It's my proposal, because after your intervention, to open a new discussion will be like losing a good balance.
Can I have my last contribution, which
Please
is,
do it.
Of course, we have certain number. We have yet 3 or 4 workshops. I think they are devoted to certain subjects, and we shouldn't lose them. But I suggest that we will, after we finish the series of the technical workshops, I will discuss with the IRBIS, the project team, to organize a half-a-day seminar devoted to discussion on those critical topics that were raised during the course of these thematic workshops. So don't worry, I will do my best to organize that half-a-day seminar, let's say perhaps June. Let me say I'm going to visit the country perhaps the end of May, beginning of June, for a couple of weeks. So perhaps there will be an opportunity. If not, we will do it online with Andrzej and of course, Ramil. Perhaps we can invite somebody else. And we have just run the discussion on certain topics without very special technical presentation. We just recall the topics that you raised during discussions and open the discussion to make some conclusions and define certain guidelines for the policymakers in the country.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jacek, for your comments and wrapping up the meeting. Thank you, Ramil, for your great moderation and summaries of the discussion. Thank you, Nazrin, and all IRBIS team for supporting us in this process. Thank you very much, Mr. Musayev, for interpretations. But first of all, I would like to thanks you all participants for your participation and contribution to the discussion. See you next time on Friday morning. Thank you. Bye.